Okay, so I think this video is directed more towards worldly spouses out there, and of course, the ex-JW community. And I'm glad to have you guys listen. This particular subject is sort of like, how the society, the Jehovah Witness organization, makes their members feel guilty all the time about the slightest thing, even things that don't even exist. Uh, I sort of have that sort of feeling as well, but in a lower way. Meaning, since I'm against the Jehovah Witness dogma and what they stand for in the background, as far as enslaving their members, in my opinion, and all the activism, the low key activism that I'm doing to try to at least get my family to think critically about their chosen religion. My immediate family, I'm talking about my wife and kids. I get the feeling of guilt a lot of times because I have to do it on the down low. I have to do it in sly, sort of, I wouldn't say deceptive ways, but, you know, creative ways to do that sort of activism to a point where it flies below the radar and my wife will not suspect it's happening, so she wouldn't, clam up or build that wall against me and have the Jehovah Witness indoctrination in her identify myself as, trying to talk her out of being a Jehovah Witness. But the guilt part of my part is all the background stuff like, I wouldn't call it lying, but being a little bit deceptive, white lies here and there to hide my activities or to mask my true intentions. And I have to mask it in other ways as, someone asking questions and, all these recordings I do under the radar, hidden, so I could at least warn others not to get into this mess that I'm in, or that my family's in, mainly. And yeah, I do get that feeling of guilt because of that. But when I look at the prize at the end of this, if it's successful, it's all well worth it. So with that, what I'm trying to say is if any of you guys out there are feeling the same or have some sort of lingering feeling of guilt because of the activities you're doing to combat the Jehovah Witness dogma against your family, think critically and think of, the actual prize at the end of freedom that your family will have, and they could go ahead and, extend their wings and do whatever they want to do as far as, spirituality without the dogma of the Watchtower Society coming down and oppressing them. So I wouldn't call this a little pep talk, but that's just a passing thought I had today in preparation of the main topic of this video here, which is directly related. And it stems from the fact that even though I'm not associated with the Watchtower Society as far as being a member, I just have an association by marriage. I'm married into it, in a sense. I still have that sort of heavy thumb of the Watchtower Society upon myself as well, as I mentioned before with my activism and combating their dogma. It's a slow process in my part, or at a standpoint that I'm in right now, because you don't want to overwhelm your spouse with, the hundreds of issues that comes up with the Jehovah Witness dogma. I mean, you pick a subject, it's related to the Jehovah Witnesses, you're going to find holes in their argument. So a person with my sort of personality is feeling a little bit angsty. I want to do a bit more than what I'm doing now. Maybe not in my household, but more than likely outside the household, at your work location, in the street, or just walking around. And this came to me from just having a, simple conversation with my coworkers. And this whole situation of me trying to deprogram my family for them to think for themselves and everything, and trying to explain that to other worldly people is kind of difficult, and where to start to explain this whole thing. So I just start with what I'm going through with my family. I just tell them, the story that I'm going through right now. And I told them, the Jehovah Witness religion is not what it seems to be, as far as the nice people not knocking on your door. Yes, the people themselves at the door more than likely are really nice, the majority of them, and that's my personal opinion. But behind that is an organization that's bent on abuse, in my opinion. So in passing, a couple of coworkers that I'm really close to, or have a really good talking, rapport between us, I tell them what I'm going through, and it's really therapeutic for me. But what's interesting is, like this one lady I know, she's like a mama bear to me. She just takes me under her wing, and pretty much takes care of me pretty good. And in this other work location where her husband is working as a supervisor in that other location, a couple of cities away. So I go over there, and this other person, this other supervisor comes up to me, and we're talking, and I'm taking care of business with him and everything. And we sit down for a little bit and just talk regularly. And he brought up the subject of my family situation. You see, his wife told him the story of what I'm going through. So he brought it up, and then I expounded further into what's going on with me, and and my kids. It's mainly my kids. I'm focusing on them, and how my wife is possibly, I wouldn't say a lost cause, but she's a card-carrying Jehovah Witness, and it's hard to crack that shell, that wall, the JW wall between us, as far as that, in that sense there, and how I have to be careful about what I say, do, and act, so I wouldn't, give my wife some red flags about me messing up her spirituality, putting her in what the Jehovah Witness organization call spiritual danger. So he's listening to the story straight from me and everything, and then we just talk a little bit more and everything, and he tells me good luck with that and everything, and he's a Christian, so he told me that he'll be praying for me. In that situation, something that I'm a little bit ashamed of, being a typical man, uh, not in my opinion, not protecting my kids from this particular abusive organization, has turned into sort of like an anti-witnessing tool for other people to listen to. And that particular story spread from one person to the other, and I'm sure they told their friends or their other co-workers as well. Another true story, about maybe, I would say, a month or two ago, I had this superintendent come into the office, and we're talking business and everything, and I have an office space, and on my desk, I got my usual work-related materials there, but I have this book on top of the desk called Reasoning with Jehovah Witnesses with the Scriptures, or something to that effect. It's kind of like the book Reasoning with the Scriptures that the Jehovah Witness have, so they could, what do you call that, do their apologetics from their point of view. But I had a book that was like the other way around, is apologetics to combat their points on the Bible, reasoning with the Scriptures against the Jehovah Witnesses, in a sense. So he sees the book on my bench, and on on my desk, and he's like, "Hey, I got that book." Or a book from that same author. He wasn't sure if it was that particular book or another one that that author has written. So that opened up an avenue of conversation right then and there, and I told him my story. And a Christian would say my testimony, but I don't think it's the same. Let me know if it's the same or different. I don't know the difference. Testimony, story. It's my personal true story of what I'm dealing with, mainly what my children are dealing with. So I tell them my whole story, how it's really hard to, talk to a Jehovah Witness in a sort of traditional sense. You have to kind of get into their heads, and we're using their material and their jargon, their culture, to sort of get your foot into the door with them, to kind of talk to them, and things of that nature, the things that I'm talking to you in this channel. So we talk more, and we talk for like a couple of hours, and he's just fascinated. I mean, and it ends, and nothing happens, and that's about it. But just this week, a couple of days ago, I meet up with him again. So he comes over to my office and everything, and we're going out to the field to do some inventory on some stuff, work related. And I'm driving him, and it's going to take all day, a good 6 hours of driving around to different locations. So he brings up the subject again, and to the tune of, "Hey, how's Jehovah Witness thing going with you?" And jokingly, I'm like, "I'm still fighting. I'm in the fight. I'm deep in the fight." So he tells me that in the place where he works, he's staying at is a trailer park. His real house and everything is very far away, so during the work week, he lives in this trailer park during the work week because it's cheap. He can bring his trailer in there, and he spends the nights there during the week. But in this particular trailer park, there's a lot of Jehovah Witnesses. So, and he tells me too that he told my story, to his wife. And they're Christians. They go to a traditional church and everything. And we're making comparisons and everything. I'm telling them the ins and out of their subculture, as far as their the way they do things, from disfellowshipping, and the little act that they do in front of the podium to act like they're knocking on doors, and how to a salesman class in a way. And he's just fascinated about the backstory of this whole thing. And he tells his wife, and they relay their stories with interactions with Jehovah Witnesses in their lives and everything. And he's telling me a story about this one lady that comes over the house, this young lady, and she has become like somewhat of friends with her wife. And he tells me so. And he asked me, so this lady that comes in once in a while, her being all friendly and everything, is that just an act to make her convert? And I'm like, more than likely, yes, but maybe so, maybe not. I don't know. It may be genuine, but with my experience or with them, it's usually not genuine. It's just a means to convert you into their religion. So we talked for a good 6 hours about this. I mean, the whole spectrum of Jehovah Witness culture. And there was a good 2 or 3 other people that I told my particular story or testimony, and they go ahead and tell other people of this, thing that, that they never heard of, because they're the only thing they know about Jehovah Witnesses is the stereotype of these nice people that come to interrupt you on your Saturday mornings, but had no idea of this, other subculture behind it. And when I tell their story, they come up with something like, "Oh, that explains everything. Oh, that explained this other situation of something creepy that happened where the Jehovah Witness person has said or done something, or sort of their behavior is kind of off kilter, where my worldly coworker friends will say, "Oh, that makes sense now about a particular behavior." So, in a span of a year that I started talking about this with my friends, I would say I unwitnessed to at least 6 to 7 people, at least directly, where in turn they told their significant other about what I'm going through with my experience with them. You hear the reports that it takes a pioneer or Jehovah Witness knocking on doors, 18,000 hours a year, or something to that effect. This astronomical number of hours just to convert one convert into baptism into the Jehovah Witness, where my efforts of unwitnessing has exponentially did the opposite, the other way around, and taken perspective witnesses away from the clutches of the Jehovah Witnesses. And I gotta admit, that feels really good. It feels like I'm doing something positive. So I thought maybe I needed to step up my activities a little bit further than what I'm doing, because I'm really introverted, so I don't open up to people. And I mean, how can I crack that ice and say, "Hey, stay away from Jehovah Witnesses. They're bad people." No, that's not my style. But instead, I thought maybe I do a lot. I do this instead, where I travel a lot for business. So once in a while, I'm out of the city that I live in. So what I thought about doing is perhaps, flyers or cards or something to that effect. But I thought for me, I think would be to write something on a T-shirt, wear a T-shirt where I am warning the public about the Jehovah Witnesses. A nice, sweet, short message or warning that informs the public of the Jehovah Witness. If this other, worldly person is a Christian or non-Christian or that have interest or something like that. So I ordered up some T-shirts, 3 long sleeves and 3 short sleeves. The print is on the back of the T-shirt, so if anybody's reading the T-shirt, they will not feel uncomfortable reading my T-shirt while I'm facing them. So with the print in the back, they can read all they want and not feel uncomfortable, and I won't notice them, and it's more comfortable all around. So it starts off as on the very top, jwfacts.com. This is an awesome site. Solid facts, explanations with publications from the Jehovah Witness with their flip-flop, dogma going back and forth. And it's just an awesome site for just that, JW Facts. And then in red letter, warning. And this is the one subject that I'm going to focus on when I'm talking to my wife or anybody else close to me about the Jehovah Witness and what I feel about it is Jehovah Witnesses teach Jesus is not your mediator. That is, in my opinion, a pivotal doctrine that is just antichrist, in my opinion, or just contrary to the whole Bible in itself. But it doesn't come to a surprise when my father-in-law tells me that the Bible was only written for 144,000 anointed. So there you go. But regular Christians or people not of the Jehovah Witness faith that would be a red flag right off the bat that, the Jehovah Witness doesn't explain or even go into. It seems like the Jehovah Witness as a whole doesn't even know of this doctrine, is buried so deep into their website and documentation and publications that it seems like it's hardly ever brought up unless, you are totally indoctrinated and was taught this at some point. So right below it, I have 4 Bible verses that would say the contrary to Jesus not being your mediator. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5, John chapter 14, verse 6, Romans chapter 8, verse 34, and Hebrews chapter 7, verse 25. Those 4 verses alone say differently from what the Jehovah Witness would say, that Jesus is your mediator, your intercessor, only one way to the Father, and that's through Jesus alone. And I'm paraphrasing, but all 4 of those verses attest to that one theme. So that is a rebuttal to the Christian there, to let them know that Jesus is your mediator. Then right below that, I have just my opinion on it is, to love the Jehovah Witness people, but question their leadership and doctrine. So I didn't want this to be a witch hunt or yelling fire in the crowded theater or something to that effect, or sensationalize, and basically not to blame the rank and file Jehovah Witnesses, to love them as people, because they're just looking out for their best interest, or looking out for everyone's best interest, but they're just a bit misguided by the leadership. Again, love the Jehovah Witness people, but question their leadership and doctrine. So I'm sort of de-escalating maybe a pissed off attitude someone might have when they find out that Jehovah Witness teach that Jesus is not their mediator. So below that, I got a couple of Bible verses that would sort of remind people not to get pissed off or be combative, to have a conversation and not a confrontation, where Colossians chapter 3, verse 12 would say, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience." Have patience towards the Jehovah Witness, and gentleness and kindness and humility, and overall compassion, because they surely need it. They don't need, an angry scowl or something like that. The leadership does, but not the rank and file. So Matthew chapter 22, verse 36 through 40 is pretty much the overall commandment that is above all, the most important commandment according to Jesus. The first and great commandment is to love your God. Then the second most important commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. And on these 2 commandments depends all the law and the prophets. So basically the golden rule: love your neighbor as you love yourself. Diffuse the situation. This is just a warning. And then in smaller print, I got jwfacts.com on the bottom. So I'm just going to sport this t-shirt, or long sleeve t-shirt, when I'm out of town. It may bring up conversation with people. They'll probably, want me to expound a little bit further, but that's their choice. They'll see it on my person, and hopefully they will do some research going through jwfacts.com. Of course, there's other platforms that they could research as well: YouTube, Facebook, you name it. They could even go to jw.org and find out for themselves that the Jehovah Witness teach Jesus is not your mediator, because it's on their website if you do a search for it, and I would tell them exactly where to look. They're in print as proof as that I'm not lying as far as my claims on my t-shirt. If I wear this to work, I believe this is not hate speech or anything to that effect. If anything, it's just religious freedom on my part, my First Amendment right. Nothing on this t-shirt is a lie. It's the facts. It's truthful. They could research this, look at it, and say, yep, it's written right there. Jesus is not the mediator for all of mankind, only to the 144,000 anointed. So I'm definitely not lying or slandering the Jehovah Witnesses on this regard. So I should expect to have this in about a couple of weeks. It's not being delivered to my house. It's going to be delivered to my workplace. So in case my wife opens the package, she will not be, horrified when she sees it. So, okay. So this is just a little something that I'm going through to share with y'all to see, what happens. And I'll let you know what happens.